What's up everyone, Shadow Taurus here to bring you a different kind of video. This isn't really a video on power scaling per se, but it's more of a response to popular power scaler and YouTuber Seth the Programmer. Now, Seth made a video called Sasuke vs Rock Lee, Who Would Win, co-hosted by Swag Kage, and in their video, they basically said Sasuke would win and even went to a bit of wank scaling at the end. Now, we won't be touching the wank scaling, but more will be touching on the meat and potatoes of the video. Specifically, the whole Sasuke versus Lee debate. Now, all the evidence and scaling I am providing is exclusively from the manga of Naruto. You will see scans on screen as I talk. As well, Seth's video will be in the description below if you'd like to go watch it, just in case people think I'm taking Swag and Seth out of context. Anyways, without further ado, let's start the video. Now, the first thing I'd like to touch on is this statement in Seth's video. Swag Kage states that Sasuke fought a much more powerful version of Gaara. Now, I have problems with this. The first big thing is that, how did Gaara exactly get stronger? They never actually proved that Gaara got any stronger from his fight with Lee, they just stated in the video, and so I'm a bit confused. As well as Swag stated that Gaara's sand was sort of relative to Lee's speed, which is very, very wrong. The sand managed to block 3 hits, then Lee hit Gaara twice. He completely speed blitzed the sand, so not sure how they came to that conclusion. Now, in their video, they're using the anime a lot, so I don't know if they're scaling off the anime or just purely the manga, but yeah. As well, Seth makes a statement that Sasuke seems to punch harder than Lee, which is kinda strange. His reasoning is because Sasuke made Gaara tired, which I would simply attribute to him being mentally compromised, but we'll talk more about that later in the video. But anyways, in the manga, after 2 hits from Lee, or technically 1, Gaara's sand armor was falling off completely, leaving his jaw exposed, and he had to reapply the whole sand armor. Whereas 2 hits from Sasuke barely started to crack and break the armor, so I'm not sure where he got that Sasuke hits harder than Lee, but that's kind of wrong. One more thing before we move on to the actual Lee stuff is that Seth seems to imply that Sasuke pushed Gaara into activating that sort of barrier thing around him, which means he scales above Lee, which is just not the case. For those who don't know, Gaara actually went into his fight with Sasuke with a massive mental handicap. After seeing Guy protect Lee, something snapped inside Gaara. He started having headaches, started talking to himself, and just going outright insane. As we see at the beginning of his fight with Sasuke, he's not mentally prepared for the fight, and even later in the fight, when Gaara goes into his strange cocoon ball, Tamari says he's not following the plan, meaning Gaara is so mentally compromised from both his experience with Rock Lee and his fight with Sasuke that he disregarded the whole plan just to kill Sasuke. But this brings me to a bigger topic on the whole Rock Lee versus Gaara fight, and why Lee is so downplayed. So let's talk about that. So Rock Lee did nearly beat Gaara, this is a fact. But what if I told you that was not Lee at his best during that fight? If you guys remember, Lee fought and was defeated by Dosu and his squad, mainly due to the fact that he was extremely fatigued by the primary Lotus when he tried to use it on Dosu to finish the fight quickly. As was stated by Lee, "Oh, this is not good. That last move I did toasted me. I've got nothing." This means that Lee went into his fight with Gaara not only injured because of his injuries sustained by Dosu's squad, but he also went into it fatigued from the primary Lotus against them. Let's also talk about some misconceptions surrounding Rock Lee, shall we? Now, a lot of people are under the impression that Rock Lee cannot use chakra. This is actually false. What Guy says is that Lee has practically no ninjutsu or genjutsu abilities, and a lot of people misinterpret this as to say that Lee cannot use his chakra. However, it's later explained that activating the 8 inner gates, one must use their chakra to override the limiters in their body. As stated by Kakashi, they constantly maintain limits on the amount of chakra flowing through the body, limits that the Lotus uses chakra to forcibly override. So yes, Lee can still use his chakra, he just can't mold it into ninjutsu or genjutsu like other shinobi. As well, people like to point to this data book statement that says, Gaara, who found himself at a disadvantage during the fight with his strongest opponent, Sasuke, to try to say that Sasuke is stronger than Lee, but as I pointed out earlier, Lee was not in his peak when he fought Gaara, so using that statement to say Sasuke is stronger than Lee is nonsensical, since Gaara never fought a healthy, non-injured, non-tired Lee. However, how do I think the fight would actually go down? Well, let's talk about that. Now, when we're actually talking about the fight, we don't actually need to talk about a lot. mainly because a few things are already spelled out for us in the manga, such as speed. Sasuke is stated by both Lee and Guy that his speed is relative to that of weightless Lee. And so we can say that his speed should be relative to each other, so that's already good. And we already talked about strength earlier, so we can give that edge to Lee. Now let's talk about their taijutsu. Now, Kakashi states that Sasuke managed to copy Lee's taijutsu, or mimic it as he said. However, that does not mean he's on the same level of taijutsu prowess as Lee. Lee is called a genius by Kakashi and focuses solely on his taijutsu, like exclusively. So while yes, Sasuke copied Lee's taijutsu, we have no evidence to prove that he is better at it than Lee. As we see, Lee was able to immediately pick up on that Sasuke was using his own taijutsu, showing that he's incredibly perceptive. Now, if we factor in Sasuke's Sharingan, I would say they tie. Maybe Sasuke having the slight edge in taijutsu, but the biggest thing we need to talk about is their stamina, because there's some problems there. So firstly, Sasuke's stamina is absolute garbage here. He can barely keep up the speed of Lee for even a couple minutes in hits, whereas Lee, even after using a primary lotus against Dosu, was able to go on to use his full speed against Gaara rather effortlessly. Lee even stated in his fight with Dosu that the primary lotus had toasted him, so it's very clear that Lee has a stamina advantage heavily. So when it really comes down to it, Sasuke wouldn't be able to beat Lee. Lee just has such a stamina advantage that Sasuke really can't win, and if we factor in the gates, it's a complete stomp. So that's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I would like to say again that this is not to discredit or disrespect Seth the Programmer or Swag Kage. I just thought I might add a little context to what they were saying and give a little more of an accurate representation of the fight. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye!